Cleo by KB HURST. My mom and I lived with my Uncle Miguel in a rough neighborhood in Jacksonville, Florida. She worked as a nursing aide third shift down at the hospital, and there was little money coming in, so it helped that we were offered a place to stay after my dad died of liver disease from drinking himself to death. My mom and I were treated very good by Miguel, if I had to be honest, looking back. He gave me one of his spare rooms and my mom another in his small 2-story house just at the end of a cul-de-sac. My mom knew that Miguel was part of a gang of some sort, and that being said, she still felt he could be a father figure to me and help me be a man and all that. In retrospect, probably not the wisest idea for a skinny, insecure boy of 15. She didn't question Miguel's choices too much, but she knew what he did, which was mostly sell drugs, and she'd pretend she knew nothing about it. I mean, it was easier that way, I guess. Miguel would take me on runs with him sometimes to collect money from people. I usually stayed in the car and never questioned it. There were a few times I know I heard gunshots, but he always came back to the car all calm, and we'd go out about our business like nothing happened. One day, he brought home a box of American Pit Bull Terriers. He was holding on to them to sell them for a guy he knew or whatever. He wanted my mom and I to believe, at least that's what he said. He let me pick out one that I wanted as my pet. He told me it was against his better judgment, but it would teach me about responsibility, and my mom agreed. One of the puppies came over to me right off the bat, licking my hand. She was reddish-brown with green eyes. I picked her up, and when I looked at her, I knew she was the one, and I named her Cleo. I didn't have a lot of friends my age, so Cleo quickly became my best friend, and Cleo and I went everywhere together. I taught her how to sit, do tricks, like play dead, and do jumps. I measured she could jump almost 5 feet off the ground. She would spend hours with me. I used the money Miguel paid me to buy food for Cleo, treats, and bus trips to the vet for checkups. She'd wake me up every morning licking my face so that I could get up and take her outside for a morning walk. She was smart and always knew what mood I was in. If I were sad, she'd lay with me with her big eyes looking up at me and one paw on my chest. If I were happy, she would zoom around the room, tail wagging. If I was just chill, she was chill. She was like a part of me, no different than having a third hand. One afternoon, I went on another run with Miguel. He had been at some guy's house, and he made me go with him to the door. I felt nervous about it, hoping that no bad shit would be going down. There was an old guy sitting on the porch with some weird demonic tattoo that said Lazarus, with a skeleton holding a scythe. I looked at him, and he didn't say anything. He just looked down at the ground. Just as I feared, the guy that answered the door didn't have the money he owed Miguel, and so Miguel, being Miguel, he let his temper get the better of him. He looked at the guy on the porch and told the guy at the door he'd shoot his grandpa if he didn't give him the $100. The old man looked worried, but said nothing, just staring at us with this sort of evil look on his face. He looked at Miguel and grabbed him by the arm out of nowhere. "No, Miguel, no, please don't shoot him." Miguel looked really annoyed and put his gun in his pocket, storming off to the car. I knew he'd be angry with me. I turned to walk in the direction of the car, and the old man grabbed me out of nowhere. I looked down in horror. "Come on, Tommy," yelled Miguel, about to reach for his gun again. "Son, for a life, you are given a life." I looked down at the crazy old man who looked insane. I tried to get away from his grasp, but he held on to me even tighter, and then pointed at Miguel. "Mephistopheles has a gift for your friend. He waits." I broke free and I ran to the car and listened to Miguel berate me the entire way home. He told me to stay out of his business when he was working. He told me I was weak and all that. and how I needed to learn to be a man. I listened in silence. I thought no more of the old man, but I was glad Miguel didn't kill him in front of me. Things took a weird turn a few nights later. Miguel came home late one night acting all crazy, punching walls and knocking over stuff. And then he came busting into my room, yelling he needed me to give him Cleo. I looked at him like he was crazy. Cleo? What for? Listen, kid, you don't understand. I'm gonna be killed if I don't win that money back. Give me the damn dog. I felt sick to my stomach. I looked at Cleo, who was growling at our arguing, and Miguel just grabbed her by the collar of her neck and dragged her over to him. He put a muzzle on her and hooked her to a leash. Miguel, stop it! Where are you taking her? She's my dog and you can't have her. Miguel pushed me up against the wall, knocking the wind out of me. Listen here, you little bitch. I lost $5,000 on this fight and I have no dogs left. I need her, or you don't eat next week. And you and your mom can go back to living on the streets. I won't be able to afford this place if I don't fix this. I was crying and sobbing. I watched as he dragged Cleo out of the house and basically threw her into the back seat of his car. I hated Miguel, and I would never forgive him for what happened next. I couldn't sleep. I was up when my mom got off work. I told her what happened and she sighed, not knowing what to say. She hugged me and I could tell she felt so helpless. We were sitting there when Miguel drove up. He got out of his car, slamming the door. He looked like he had been in a fist fight because he had scratches and blood all over him. He looked at my mom and me with his head down. He told us that it was over. What do you mean it's over? I yelled at him. Tommy, stop! My mom held me back from rushing at Miguel. Miguel laughed in a way that I had never known him to be. He sadistically seemed to take joy in the moment. If you want your stupid, cowardly dog, she's in the back seat. I ran out to the car and I opened the door to the back seat. And then my heart broke. Cleo had a gunshot to the left of her shoulder. That bastard had shot her because she lost a dogfight. That is the only reason dogs like these die, if they lose a fight. I felt a hand on my shoulder just then. It was my mom, who was also crying. She didn't say anything, and I knew she felt awful, but I wanted her to be as angry as I was. Miguel stepped over to the car. There's shovels in the garage. When it gets dark, bury her. You can always get another dog. You made her soft, kid. She didn't last 2 seconds in the ring. I looked down at the blood, and my pain turned to anger. She wasn't a fighter. She was my friend. Why couldn't you have just brought her home? Why did you have to kill her? Tears blinded my eyes as I sobbed. Sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some. Shit, that's life, son. He lit a cigarette and just walked off completely uncaring, like it was just another Tuesday. I wanted to kill him. I grabbed a sheet from the laundry room and went to the car. I got her out and carried her to the back of the house. I laid her on the stairs of her back deck and then I covered her with the sheet. I couldn't look at her like this. She was once so full of life, and now she was dead. I was so sad I just went to my room and shut the door, sobbing. If I could have, I would have run away and never looked back. I finally fell asleep sometime after midnight, forgetting the morbid task of burying my best friend. I dreamt of Cleo and I running around, and she hadn't really died. In my dream, we were playing and she was licking my face. I slowly began to wake up. The early light from the morning sun was shining in my bedroom when I felt a familiar feeling. I was being licked on the face, and when I opened my eyes, I sat up in disbelief. Cleo was sitting at the side of my bed, covered in blood. It took me a few moments to let it all register. How is she here? She was dead. I saw her dead. She was stiff. I covered her with a sheet. Had all this been just a bad dream? I scratched my head and looked at her again, horrified. I was frightened, and then she barked, stirring me from my fear. She barked again, spinning around, then getting in play mode. She wanted me to follow her like every other morning. I grabbed one of the spare leashes I had hanging in my room and I connected it to her collar. I looked at her. It was Cleo, all right. Silly as usual. Okay, girl, we'll go. I don't know how you're okay, but I'm sure glad. Looks like you'll need a bath, too. I looked at the sticky mess of dark red goo dried around her face and neck, and she seemed to be covered in it. I wondered how she was there standing in front of me. She still had the bullet wound because you could see a black scabbed over hole next to her at her side. I figured I had better call the vet after I took her out to go to the bathroom. I wasn't sure how she had gotten in the house either, and as I wondered about that, I saw it. When I got to the bottom of the stairs, I stopped. The entire room and walls were covered in blood splatter. The patio door was wide open, and Miguel was laying in the doorway with his throat ripped out. I stood in shock at the horror around me. I blinked hard, still so confused as to what happened. I looked around for my mom, and to my relief, she was still at work. She was safe, but what happened to Miguel? I thought maybe it was one of the guys coming back for the money he lost. I still have no idea. I called the cops and they came and did some questioning, but didn't seem to care. They just took the body away. It was another drug dealer to them, right? My mom and I both stood in shock for a while after, saying nothing for hours. And slowly, over time, things got a little bit back to normal. 2 months had went by and the police declared it to be a gang-related and some sort of payback for Miguel's crew. I'm not even sure the police did any investigation at all, to be honest. We were even more shocked to learn that Miguel had made a will and left the house to my mom and I. So at least we still had a roof over our heads. There was just one thing that no one thought of, but only I knew to be true. Miguel's throat had been torn out by something with teeth. I had seen the scratches and the bite marks on the shoulder below his throat. There was just something about Cleo. It made me a little afraid, to be honest. Even as I write this, she's lying beside me with her big blockhead on my lap. I know she loves my mom and I know she would never hurt us. She's just different, though, and I can't explain it. Some kids were messing with me in the neighborhood after school the other day, and then I saw them on my evening walk with Cleo. One of the kids started to provoke me, and I saw 4 or 5 of them surround me. Just as I'm thinking, oh shit, I'm afraid they might hurt me, or worse, Cleo. The boys looked at me and then at Cleo, and then suddenly stopped laughing and messing with me. They seemed to be entranced by something. And then one of them looked in horror and ran away, and the other kids followed him. She seemed to be staring at them like a hunter would prey. She didn't even growl, she just gave him a look, like she was possessed by something. I mean, I'm glad she was with me to save the day, but to be honest, I'm still kind of freaked out by the whole thing. What did she do that made them run away? I mean, she was always a very intelligent dog, but now she seems to have almost preternatural quality that I can't explain. I mean, I'm so glad to have her back, and I can't imagine not having her be by my side. When I think of what could have been, I'm grateful she's still part of our lives. I love her, and she's still my best friend. I only have one question. Who or what brought her back from the dead?